Service and the Strength for It, by Horatius Bonar. There is work to be done for God on earth, work such as cannot be done in heaven, nor is it less vast, either in itself or its issues, because crowded into so short a space as the one life of man. The time is short, and the work is great, and its doers are a feeble folk, and the difficulties are numerous, and the hindrances disheartening. But the work is God's, and it must be done. I must work the work of him that sent me, while it is day, and it is the thought of its being his work, work such as can only be done here below, that makes us willing to toil through the whole of our 80 years and 10, bearing the burden and heat of the day. "Why are you reconciled to life?" said one to Whitefield. "Because I can do for Christ on earth what I cannot do in heaven." Yet the same Whitefield said, "I want to leap my 70 years. I long to be dissolved and to be with Christ," feeling as Paul did, in a strait between the two things, between resting with Christ or laboring for Christ. The work to be done is of the same kind in all ages, yet it is not the same work in any. It varies, for God does not repeat himself in word or plan or work. Yet whatever be the differences between age and age, it always bears a peculiar mark or impress, as being work done for God, with ends and aims such as belong to no other work, and with characteristics of nature specifically and entirely its own. It is work that never stands still, no, not for a moment, either through want of means or hands, for he whose work it is has the silver and gold at his disposal, and out of earth's stones could raise up workmen, should all else fail. "My Father worketh hitherto, and I work," said he who was the great doer of the work of God, teaching us that never from the beginning has God allowed his work to stop, but carries it on as unceasingly as he makes the sun to rise and set, or the tides to ebb and flow. One workman drops, another takes his place. One standard-bearer faints, another grasps the banner. One witness passes away, another is raised up to maintain the testimony. Elijah is caught away from his work in Israel, but Elisha comes in his room. Stephen is stoned, but Saul, his murderer, is laid hold of by God to be a witness for the faith. Patrick Hamilton is martyred, but John Knox rises up. Knox dies, and Andrew Melville takes up the standard. Melville dies, and Alexander Henderson comes forward to maintain Christ's cause in Scotland. God provides workmen to do his work, and captains to fight his battles. Sometimes the work is open and visible, as when God sent forth Gideon and Barak to deliver Israel, or secret and unseen, as when the persecuted saints of Jerusalem went abroad through the land, preaching the gospel everywhere. Sometimes it is amid noise and strife, as in the case of Nehemiah, and sometimes in silence, as when the temple rose without sound of axes or hammers. Sometimes it is a long day of labor, as in John the Evangelist and Richard Baxter. Sometimes it is very short, as in John the Baptist and David Brainerd. Sometimes it is a work of suffering and martyrdom, as in Stephen or John Huss or Cranmer. Sometimes it is one of testimony and endurance, as in Enoch or Noah or Samuel Rutherford. Sometimes it is of battle and tumult, as in Joshua and David or Gustavus and Cromwell. Sometimes it is one of government, as in Joseph or Moses or Edward VI of England. Sometimes it is in simple service, as in Obadiah of Samaria, or the little maid in Naaman's house. Sometimes it is the work of erection, as in Solomon and his temple. Sometimes of restoration, as in the case of Nehemiah or Hezekiah. Sometimes it is that of reformation, as in Knox and Luther and Calvin. Sometimes it is in labor, as in Paul and John Welsh and Judson. Sometimes in preaching, as in Whitefield and Rowland Hill. Sometimes in writing, as in Augustine and Bunyan and Baxter and Edwards. It is work of the most varied kind, for every part of which God has the suitable workmen and the needed tools. Not only is there a time for every work, Ecclesiastes 3:17, but there are the doers of the work raised up and set to their parts, as were Bezaleel and Aholiab. And as this is not a work of one day or two, Ezra 10:13, but an unceasing work, so does God raise up workmen to minister continually, as every day's work requires. 1 Chronicles 16:37. and the workers are men, not angels. Angels look on and see the work done, or the battle fought, or the testimony borne, or the suffering endured. But the work, the battle, and the testimony, and the suffering are not theirs. The angel can bring food to Elijah in the desert of Beersheba, but he cannot bear Elijah's testimony. An angel can open the door of Peter's prison, but he cannot do Peter's work. An angel can shut the mouth of the lions in Babylon, but he cannot fight Daniel's battle. An angel can carry Lazarus from the rich man's gate into Abraham's bosom, but he cannot suffer the poverty or the sickness by which the poor saint did the work of God on earth. An angel stood by Paul to cheer him in the day of fear and shipwreck, but he could not carry Paul's message to Rome. Angels minister to little children, and always behold the face of their Father in heaven, but yet it is not out of their lips, but out of the mouths of babes and sucklings that God perfects praise. As angels ministered to the Son of God in his temptation, and strengthened him in the night of his agony, but could not do his work, it was so far above them, so angels minister to the saints and strengthen them and deliver them, but cannot do their work, it is so far below them. It is work which can be done only by feeble, sinful men, not by angels that excel in strength. The very nature of the work and the peculiar glory which God is to get from it make it necessary that it should be done by mortal man, not by an immortal angel, not by an invisible spirit, but by visible flesh and blood, not by the perfect, but by the imperfect, not by those who never fell and never sinned, but by the evil and the fallen, not by the untempted, unstruggling, unopposed, unwearied inhabitants of heaven, but by the tempted, struggling, weary, wounded dwellers of earth, sons of Adam, whose whole life is a battle, made up of fightings without and fears within, whose everyday experience is a wrestling with principalities and powers, with the rulers of the darkness of this world, with spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6:12. Yet it is not to all men that he commits his work, only to those who have received his testimony to the person and work of his Son, only to those who have believed the love that God hath to them. They only who know his name and his Son's name know how to do his work, and it is as such that they do it. They do not work in order to know him, but because they have known him. They do not work in order to get the life everlasting, but because they have gotten it, in the simple belief of the good news concerning him who was dead and is alive. They do not work in order to remove uncertainty as to their forgiveness and sonship, but because their knowledge of the Son of God, as the great substitute and reconciler, has already removed all doubt and given them the happy consciousness of pardon and adoption. The rest of the world's inhabitants are not doers, but undoers of the work, not helpers, but hinderers, or at the best unconscious agencies doing what they understand not, mere hewers of wood and drawers of water. Their attempts to help religion are like Uzzah's endeavor to hold up the ark when the oxen stumbled. And if they ask then, must we sit idle? What shall we do that we may work the works of God? We answer them, this is the work of God, that ye believe in him whom he hath sent. John 6:28 and 29. In setting yourselves to do God's work, you must adopt God's order. You must begin in God's way. It is not work that produces faith. It is faith that is the root of work. It is not the good work that makes the believing man. It is the believing man that makes the good work. It is the tree that makes the fruit, not the fruit the tree. It is not the wise of this world, nor the learned of the church. It is not men of intellect or literature that are the workers. Not many wise is God's announcement as to this, for God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. 1 Corinthians 1:27. It is not the great and the rich and the mighty and the men of name and rank and influence that are God's workers. Not many mighty, not many noble. 1 Corinthians 1:26. The poor and the unknown and the unhonored and the feeble and the unintellectual are often God's special agents, and by them his work is done best and with greatest glory to himself. God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things that are mighty, and base things of the world, and things which are despised hath God chosen, yea, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. 1 Corinthians 1:28 and 29. You say, what can I do? If I were a Paul, or a John, or an Augustine, or a Melanchthon, or a Rutherford, I might do something. But without learning or ability or means, how can I, in my feebleness and obscurity, do any work? Well, though you cannot be a Paul, you can be a Phoebe, a succorer of many, Romans 16:2, or a Mary, who bestowed much labor on us. Verse 6. Or a Tryphena and Tryphosa, who labored in the Lord. Verse 12. Or a beloved Persis, who labored much in the Lord. Verse 12. You cannot be the eye of the body. Can you not be the hand? You cannot be the tongue. Can you not be the foot? To each, then, of his believing ones, God says, Son, go work today in my vineyard. Matthew 21:28. Be strong, saith the Lord, and work, for I am with you, saith the Lord of hosts. Haggai 2:4. To the waverers he says, Be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58. To the disheartened he says, Be not weary in well-doing. 2 Thessalonians 3:13, Galatians 6:9. To all he says, Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give to every man according as his work shall be. Revelation 22:12. Such is the church's position here. Such is her calling. As a worker for God and with God, she must work the work of God. This is our age of service for him who called us. These are our work days. The rest comes. The Sabbath draweth on. 6 days shall we labor and do all our work, but the 7th is the Sabbath of the Lord our God. In it we shall not do any work. Exodus 20:10. For then shall come the rest which remaineth for the people of God. Hebrews 4:9. Then shall we rest and stand in our lot at the end of the days. Daniel 12:13. Then shall we rest from our labors, and our work shall follow us. Revelation 14:13. Meanwhile, let us be steadfast and unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58. For work, however, means are needed, and strength to use the means. He whose workmen we are supplies both. The strength by which we do his work successfully is that which his Spirit furnishes. Thou hast girded me with strength to battle. 2 Samuel 22:40. Self-supplied strength will help us but little, nor will the strength produced by excitement do much for us, for it operates fitfully. It is not steady and permanent, and besides, it is the offering of strange fire before the Lord which he commanded not. Leviticus 10:1. By such strength shall no man prevail. 1 Samuel 2:9. The strength needed must be calm, and its source must be as constant as it is divine. To say as Israel did, Have we not taken to us horns by our own strength? Is but to rejoice in a thing of naught. Amos 6:13. The God of Israel is he that giveth strength and power. Psalm 68:35. Nehemiah and his zealous brethren had a great work before them. They had done much in rebuilding the ruined city, but more remained to be done, and for this strength was needed. Israel must be strengthened to do the work which was coming. But they were giving way to that which would not strengthen but weaken them. It was not the sorrow of the world in which they were indulging, nor was it the sorrow of patriots mourning over their city's desolation. It was godly sorrow. For it is said, the people wept when they heard the words of the law. Nehemiah 8:9. Yet, as there is a time to weep and a time to laugh, Ecclesiastes 3:4, so their weeping, however good in itself, was out of place. It weakened their hands for the work, and the time was not one for faintness or discouragement. Mourn not, nor weep, neither be ye sorry, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. For sorrow is weakness, not strength. It makes the hands hang down, the knees grow faint. It unfits for service by making us both feeble and heartless. No doubt sorrow is oftentimes the beginning both of strength and blessing, but in itself it is neither. By means of it God does strengthen and quicken, but in so doing he uses it as the physician uses medicine, which for the time reduces and enfeebles the body, though ultimately it brings about health.